Hey, my friends, we will be right back to the show. But I have a question for you. Are you struggling with the impact of childhood trauma? Well, know that you're not alone. I'm here to let you know that I'm starting a brand new weekly coaching group that includes a year of life coaching, accountability, support, habit and goal setting, and more. I'm starting a waitlist for the group right now, and I'm only taking a handful of people. And I'll let you know that through this personalized coaching, we'll work together to help you understand how your childhood trauma has shaped your beliefs, behaviors, emotions, and will help you create a roadmap for healing and growth. Right now, you can schedule an absolutely free coaching session with me and get put on the wait list if you go to thinkunbroken.com. My friends, it's your time to turn your trauma into triumph, breakdowns into breakthroughs, and become the hero of your own story. And I'm here to support you in doing that. Just go to thinkunbroken.com to register for a free coaching call with me and to get put on the wait list for the brand new weekly coaching program. We'll be right back to the show. But before we do, I want to tell you about today's sponsor, factormeals.com, where if you go to factormeals.com/unbroken50 and use the code unbroken50, you can get 50% off your first order. That's factormeals.com/unbroken50. If you're like me and you are a person who is busy trying to create a life, heal, work on their health, wealth, and relationships, and not to mention deal with the day-to-days of normal life, you do not have time to be going to the grocery store and trying to figure out what you're going to cook every single day of the week. In fact, one time I did the math and I realized I was spending over 15 hours a week at the grocery store and cooking. When I added Factor, I got to use that time for myself, for my family, for my friends, for my community, and for my business. And so if you're in the place where you need some more support in the kitchen, head to factormeals.com/unbroken50 and use the code unbroken50 to get 50% off. Hey, my friends, we will be right back to the show. But I have a question for you. Are you struggling with the impact of childhood trauma? Well, know that you're not alone. I'm here to let you know that I'm starting a brand new weekly coaching group that includes a year of life coaching, accountability, support, habit and goal setting, and more. I'm starting a waitlist for the group right now, and I'm only taking a handful of people. And I'll let you know that through this personalized coaching, we'll work together to help you understand how your childhood trauma has shaped your beliefs, behaviors, emotions, and will help you create a roadmap for healing and growth. Right now, you can schedule an absolutely free coaching session with me and get put on the wait list if you go to thinkunbroken.com. My friends, it's your time to turn your trauma into triumph, breakdowns into breakthroughs, and become the hero of your own story. And I'm here to support you in doing that. Just go to thinkunbroken.com to register for a free coaching call with me and to get put on the wait list for the brand new weekly coaching program. Hey, my friends, we will be right back to the show. But I have a question for you. Are you struggling with the impact of childhood trauma? Well, know that you're not alone. I'm here to let you know that I'm starting a brand new weekly coaching group that includes a year of life coaching, accountability, support, habit and goal setting, and more. I'm starting a waitlist for the group right now, and I'm only taking a handful of people. And I'll let you know that through this personalized coaching, we'll work together to help you understand how your childhood trauma has shaped your beliefs, behaviors, emotions, and will help you create a roadmap for healing and growth. Right now, you can schedule an absolutely free coaching session with me and get put on the wait list if you go to thinkunbroken.com. My friends, it's your time to turn your trauma into triumph, breakdowns into breakthroughs, and become the hero of your own story. And I'm here to support you in doing that. Just go to thinkunbroken.com to register for a free coaching call with me and to get put on the wait list for the brand new weekly coaching program. Hey, what's up, Unbroken Nation? Hope that you're doing well wherever you are in the world today. I'm very excited to be back with you with another episode with our guest, Dan Stillman, who is a positive psychology practitioner, transformational mindset, and integrative medicine health coach. Dan, my friend, how are you? What is happening in your world today?
Hey, how you doing, Michael? I'm good, man. Thank you for having me on the show. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to your audience. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm very excited, man. We connected a couple months ago. I loved your story, your mission, and your journey. And I felt that you'd be just an amazing person to come on and have a conversation today. And I'm excited to dive deep with you. But before we do that, tell us a little bit about yourself, your history, your story, your journey, and how you got to where you are today.
So it all started at a very young age for me, dealing with trauma. We're not in control of the situations that we're born into. And I don't know, right, if we know this before we come into this world, if we choose it, I guess we'll find out hopefully when we pass away or move on to the next realm. But for me, I was at an early age. My parents got divorced when I was 4. The reason why my parents got divorced was my mother came out of the closet back in 1974. My mother couldn't live the lie anymore that she was gay. She felt this way her whole life. And in the DSM, if you're familiar with psychology, and the DSM book that they use to put the different mental disorders in there, up until 1974 you were considered as having a mental illness if you were gay.
Mm.
So once they removed that from the book, my mother basically said, I need to come out. I need to be my true authentic self, which is kind of an inspiration for me. And later on, I'll get into that, how she influenced me because she was a pioneer marching, for gay rights. But as a result of that, I was an only child and my parents got divorced. Of course, I'm going through a divorce, being an only child, or just even if you have siblings, is traumatic enough. But was even more traumatic for me was I had 3 cousins, my mom's sister, who were like my brothers and sisters. And as a result of my mom coming out of the closet, they didn't want to have anything to do with us anymore. So they kind of just abandoned us. So that was kind of the first, not that I understood what was going on, that shame kind of started for me at that particular time, of that, the belief of what's wrong with me, right? Which most people don't understand about the beliefs and how much they influence our thoughts, our feelings, our actions, and our results. And my mother, as a result of going through the traumatic experience that she went through, of just not people understanding her, and her sister, was very abusive, physically abusive towards her, we developed these patterns. And unfortunately, I was on the tail end of some physical abuse. Back then in the 70s, spankings were considered normal, not now, DIFUS would be called. But, as a result of that particular, physical abuse, that added to some of the feelings of, what's wrong with me? I did something wrong, developing those beliefs. There's something wrong with me. Why don't people like me? And then at the age of 9, my dad he was in my life for a while, but then he got remarried, and I have two half brothers and a stepbrother, but he decided to move to Florida. I live in New Jersey. So once again, that abandonment kind of hit again, and I was raised in a predominantly, was raised by 2 moms, really, because my mom met another lady who had 2 sons who were older than me. But I moved to their house in a neighborhood that was predominantly blue collar Christian, and I was Jewish. So I was kind of the only Jewish shortest kid basically in the neighborhood, and I experienced a lot of anti-Semitism as well. Like, people would spit in my hair. I would basically get into fights. I think the only good thing that really came from that was that at the age of 13, I started lifting weights. Like, I really started working out because I needed to protect myself. But little did I know that, the outside job that I was doing, yes, was helping me, but the inside job was just, the shame, the not loving myself, the wondering why things were happening the way that they were happening. Even though, like, I played little league and I played sports, there was always something missing in my heart. Like, there was something missing. And, my grandmother would always tell me that of all her grandchildren, like, I was the most loving and I was very introspective. I always kind of, had a soft heart for other people who were less fortunate. And during the times that I was going through these feelings of anger and just having bitterness and comparing other people, like being jealous of other people, Whenever I went through like a certain, I'd say this is like a saving grace for me, because I could have very easily gone down the wrong path and got involved in drugs and alcohol and really went that way. I always stayed the path of I'm capable of so much more. And the reason why I bring that up and why that's like my token slogan, I should say, is whenever I felt that I was like hitting a real bad spot in my life, I would always look in the mirror and tell myself, "You're capable of so much more." So and it would pull me through, and I think that was good for me. Normal kind of the teenage years. Like I said, I was in wrestling, sports, but I started to smoke pot. I drank alcohol. Just like any other probably kid did in the '80s at that age, and but there was still always something missing. I can remember my friends, like when I drink, and my friends would say to me, like, that I would say to them, "Do you like me?" Like, I'd always ask people, "Do you like me?" Right? Because I just had this, from all of the experiences that I went through in my life of the abandonment and the hurt and the physical abuse. I didn't like myself. Therefore, I was just wondering if people were just being fake to me. Right. So I kind of just grew up thinking like this and having a low self-esteem and not having confidence in my true ability. Right. And when I graduated high school, I basically didn't know what I wanted to do. And I took a year off and I worked in the mailroom at my mom's company for a year. And then my mom said, "You got to do something with your life." This is 1989. So I went to school for computer repair and robotics, and I got into IT work. And then I decided, you know what, I'm going to continue my education. I'm going to join the Air Force. But little did I know, and most people don't know who've experienced trauma, if they don't want to feel the pain, right? They dull it with alcohol and smoking pot. And at that particular time, I quit smoking pot, but I was drinking. I decided I was going to go into the Air Force, and that was like my geographical cure, right? Most
Mm.
people don't know about the geographical cure. If you kind of get everybody out of your life, you could start anew and then your problems will go away. Well, that's not how it works. And so I went into the Air Force. I was 22, and I didn't make it through basic training because they said I had asthma. They gave me immunization shots. I had a cough. They gave me a breathing test. And because of Desert Storm, they had to ship so many people out because of breathing problems that they said I was disqualified. And that was my bottom. I came home and I hit bottom, like emotionally, physically. I got really depressed. And I just got down on my hands and knees and I said, "God, please help me. Whatever you could do, just please help me." I woke up the next day and I knew somebody who was in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I went and visited this person. And little did I know that my geographical cure was not in the Air Force, but my geographical cure was to work on myself and get away from what I was experiencing at home, but moving into Alcoholics Anonymous and doing the 12-step program, going into therapy, and really that and healing this trauma. So that's what I did from 1992 to 1996. I didn't hang out with my old friends. I made new friends in AA. I worked the steps, worked the program, got sponsors, men, right? Because I didn't have a man figure in my life for all that time. So there was something that was missing from a masculine perspective. And I had some tough love when I was in AA. When one of the things that really stands out for me when I think back at one of the lessons learned, I would always complain about, well, I'm so nice to this person. How come they don't like me? And one of the old timer, my sponsor, would say to me, "Well, Dan, what makes you think everybody's going to like you anyway?" And it was like, it was like an aha moment, but I needed that, right? Because I didn't have that male perspective. So, going to Jewish family services and talking about the trauma. And I was very fortunate because going to therapy, working the steps and realizing that I wasn't an alcoholic, but I really needed that 12-step program, which I would recommend to anybody. You don't have to be an alcoholic to do a 12-step program. I don't know if you're familiar with the 12 steps, Michael, but you clean house, right? You basically clean house and you have to take an honest look at yourself.
Hey, what's up, Unbroken Nation? Just want to take a moment and invite you to be my guest at Think Unbroken Conference this November. That's right. Think Unbroken is hosting our Unbroken Con for free. It's 5 days of trauma transformation information with myself, special guests, and even some of the leading experts in trauma education from around the world. For 5 days, we're going to jump into what it means to actually take the steps to be unbroken. All you have to do is register for free at unbrokencon.com. That's unbrokencon.com. That's right. 5 days of trauma transformation information with me, special guests, and some of the world's leading trauma trained experts for free for 5 days this November. More details to come. But in the meantime, go to unbrokencon.com to register. And I'll see you there. And I'll say this, I'll agree with that. And that's something that for me in my journey, I stepped into AA, NA, and SA over the course of this healing journey. And it was very much like in these moments of like, I'm not alcoholic. That's not what this is. I'm trying to hide the hurt.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm trying to hide the pain, hide the suffering. And I think it's really interesting because sometimes I would sit in AA and I would look around and go, I don't think you're an alcoholic, other person. I just think you need a fucking hug, man.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. You know, it was because there's young kids in there and you're like, how could you be an alcoholic? Now, I'm not knocking on Alcoholics Anonymous because there's some hardcore in NA. But for me and for you, obviously, you realized like, wow, there's some value to this, but, you know, I maybe need to go somewhere else to get what I need. I'll take what I need from this particular, medium and appreciate what it's given me and be grateful. But, then life goes on. Right. Mm-hmm. So, going through those 4 years, I was lucky enough and fortunate enough to be able to confront my mother, to be able to confront my aunt and uncle and confront my dad, to deal with the trauma, to say, why did you do the things that you did? Right. Mm-hmm. I healed the hurt with my mom. She obviously got help for herself, went to therapy to deal with her things, realized that she was bipolar and got medication for that, and apologized like how horrible it was for me that I had to experience that physical abuse. My aunt and uncle, they said that basically they were just trying to protect their children. And I don't really have a relationship with them today as a result of that, because it was just kind of like, okay, that was not really a good reason. I could understand the reason, but you kind of just left me alone. Right. And my father, I went, and one of my life experiences, not having my father in my life, I decided to go live with my dad. Right. He lived in Florida. So in order to find the piece of me that was him, or vice versa, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but I think you get the gist of what I'm trying to convey. I went and moved to Florida, and it only took me 3 months to live with him in Florida to realize that I really didn't miss anything. Like I wouldn't have, he was a simple man. I kind of understood why he did what he did. And I think what it all boils down to is forgiveness, right? Mm. And I think part of my healing journey really has been not only forgiving other people, but more importantly, forgiving myself, learning to love myself. When I was 22, when I went into AA, I wrote these things and copyrighted them. They're trademark, called the 9 Ingredients of Love. Their sincerity, courtesy, unselfishness, patience, tolerance, humility, good temper, generosity, and being guileless. And I hung those on my refrigerator and I read them every morning and every night, right? Besides doing other work, such as learning what self-centered fear was, either afraid I was going to lose what I have or not get what I want and needed. And what was the antidote to that? Learning to live in the moment. Learned about unrealistic expectations, like how unrealistic expectations played a big part in myself and how I placed them on other people, which led to a lot of disappointments, because expectations could lead to disappointments.
Yeah. And actually, I want to ask you a question about that, Dan, because I had a thought as you were mentioning that you went to confront your mother, your father, your aunt and uncle. And I feel like that actually ties into exactly what you were talking about, that people have these expectations of outcome. And especially in that moment, you're like, I'm going to go in there. I'm going to tell them what's what. They're going to
Right.
change. They're going to, I don't think that's realistic though. Like I think sometimes we can set those expectations and fail. And or not fail, maybe that's not the right word I want to use, but we can set those kind of expectations leading into it and then feel like the outcome was not favorable. What I'm curious about, because I know a lot of people, and this was my experience, and I've thought about this a lot.
Hmm.
My mother died before I could confront her, through drug overdose. And I remember I kind of like took her out of my life and I said, you know what? I know that she cannot be in my life or I am not going to go down the path I need to go.
Right.
And, years later, I mean, a decade removed from that, I had this thought. I was like, I wonder what it would have been like to have that conversation. And so I'm curious for you, what prompted the want to go and have those confrontations and honestly, probably some very incredibly difficult conversations?
I felt it was the only way that I was going to heal. For me, I felt like I needed to know, and it's individualized for each person. For me, it was for me to understand and heal. And, we live in a society where, right now, as you know, it's very divisive and one side takes one side and one side takes the other. And basically, what is the root cause of that? We get hooked into one side of a story and we never gather the full facts and then make a decision, right? So, in order for me to forgive myself and forgive the people who actually I had to deal with, I need to understand why they did the things that they did. I needed to understand and hear their side of the story because then I would go through life maybe being judgmental of others. And part of my what I'm trying to do, and what I teach my kids is to really try and practice the pause before you be judgmental of others and try to ask questions and gather the facts, because if you don't, we have a way of making up stories that are just not real. We're great storytellers, right? And most of us don't know how to question our thoughts in real time. So what I've learned in positive psychology, and kind of deviating, but we went this way, is to learn real-time resilience skills and learn how to become your own cognitive-based therapist. And by doing that, by finding the evidence for and the evidence against a certain thought based on a thinking trap that you may be experiencing, such as mind reading or externalizing or personalizing or maximizing, minimizing, I think it's really important to put things in perspective and to understand where this is coming from. And is there any validity to the information that you're thinking and what you're gathering?
Yeah, that's actually such a great point. And I've never thought of the words real time resiliency. That just really hit hard for me because I always try to make meaning in the present as opposed to the past. And I found that to be very beneficial in my life. Do you think that that is a tool that can help people navigate that space of feeling like massively unhappy and disconnected?
There's probably a bunch of different components, but it's definitely a tool. I know it's for me. Like, listen, I'm a survivor just like you, Michael, of trauma, right? I have days where I have, I'm tired, I'm hungry, I don't feel well, and something could trigger something that has affected something from a trauma thing, because that neuro pathway is still there, right? But real-time resilience skills is a tool, and it could definitely help. If you have as many tools as you possibly can in your tool chest to help keep you sane and not spiral down the rabbit hole. Like, I like to use the term staying north of neutral, right? When you look at a pie chart and you look at a wheel of life, and each piece of pie is a part of your life, such as relationships, career, whatever it is, spirituality, and for some reason at your job something bad happens and you go from a 7 down to a 3, what do? You got to dig into your tools, and one of those tools is real-time resilience skills to question the thoughts that you're having, because you may be thinking, oh, my boss is an asshole. Right? He
It
just
might
did.
be.
Yeah, right, it may be, but he just did this to me. But then instead you got to think, well, maybe this person's having a bad day. Like, why did this happen? X, Y, and Z. Like get fact-based data, evidence for, evidence against. It's like you're taking your brain to court, right? And you have to use like real-time resilience skills to say, hmm, what's really happening here? You
Yeah,
know?
I love that, Dan. So I say this to myself all the time. I do not trust my brain. Like when, like when you
Yeah,
understand neuroscience, when you
yeah,
understand the impact of trauma and being in a cortisol state and what it's like to grow up in that, and then to like navigate dissociation and then recognize behavioral patterns, and then you get into these things that are triggers and emotional scars. It's like your brain is not trustworthy, right? Until, and this was my experience, until I understood the research and the science and the
yes.
practical functions of the brain. Because
Ah,
I realized something really important, and I'm going to lead somewhere, and I want to know your thoughts on this. For a long time, I felt like every time I listen to my brain, I get in trouble, right? But every
yeah.
time I listen to my gut, I'm right. And I was thinking, I was coaching one of my clients recently. I said, how many times have you had this moment where you meet someone or you do something or you're in an interaction? You're like, that doesn't feel right. And then a month, 6 weeks, 5 days later, it doesn't matter. You go, damn it, I should have trusted my gut.
Yeah,
Do I,
yeah.
am I on the right path there?
Oh yeah, you have an intuitive thinking system, which is your gut feeling. And you know, when you're making like some serious, there's a difference between making a short-term decision when you're going to the store and you got to purchase something off the shelf, compare with like a decision that's really a hardcore decision that you have to make that may impact your life. It's always the good if you could sit on it and really kind of think about the decision and not rush into the decision, right? Sometimes those things come quickly. It's your gut feeling. Like, for instance, just as an example, you probably had this experience. You look at the weather report, they say it's going to rain. You look in the mirror, you're talking to yourself, brushing your teeth, say, you know, I should take my umbrella today, right? And that's your gut telling you. And then your other voice comes into your head, which is metacognition, because you're talking to yourself, says, nah, you don't need the umbrella. That's your ego. What happens? You go outside, you don't bring the umbrella, and you get rained on. You're like, I should have brought the umbrella, right? So it's so true. It's like, you know, it depends on what kind of decision you're making. But I always try to listen to that first voice. Whenever I question
Mm.
myself from when I say, nah, I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. What's that nah? That's when I got to say, practice the pause, Dan. Practice the pause. You know?
Yeah, that's so great. When you, I want to go back a little bit.
Mhm.
When you're in this pivot to start stepping into the path that you're on now, I'd love for you to kind of paint a little bit more of a picture that has led you down this pathway, because obviously you do a lot of really beautiful things around psychology and mindset, but particularly I want to talk about positive psychology. And so
Yeah.
I'm curious, like what led you down this path and how has it impacted your life?
Yeah, so, you know, listen, the journey of learning didn't stop when, you know, I explained the story when I was 22 till I was 26. You know, I did wind up getting a divorce and I have two kids and I had to learn from that experience. And then I got in another 10-year relationship, which really helped me become a man because this person taught me how to not be a people pleaser. Again, you know, I'll remind your audience that I didn't have that father figure, right? Like, there is no playbook that's given to a man, you know, when he is born, right? We're taught how to open up doors, how to do certain things, and but we're not taught how to express our feelings. So I still had to learn how to become my true authentic self, how to be more vulnerable, not be a people pleaser, like how to interact with people, especially with someone from the opposite sex. And in that 10-year relationship, I learned how to be vulnerable and accept a strong woman into my life, how and ask and be able to ask for help. I learned how to express my needs and wants. I learned a bunch of things in that relationship, and one of the things that I could take away from, you know, that relationship is I got into yoga and meditation, which was like almost the last piece that I needed to learn. And I'm going into, you know, what the question that you asked me, because, you know, when I was, and that relationship had ended, like people, I believe that people come in and out of your life for reasons. I believe things happen for a reason. And, you know, when I was 48 years old, uh, I was at a job for 11 years and I got laid off from that job. And I thought to myself, wow, I'm looking back at my life, and and all the things that we discussed and the story that I share. And I said, there's meaning to this. There's something that I should be doing, right? What is my true purpose? Now, I've been very successful in IT, but I'm like, there's something, I have a gift. What is my gift? And that's when I came up with the word Yomenga. Yomenga came into my mind. I was sitting on the couch meditating, and the word Yomenga, which is the word men in between the word yoga. And that's where this journey started, basically, how I got into positive psychology, integrative medicine, and all these things, because I started to create this business, Yomenga. Besides what I have, holistic WellCare advisors, and then I have holistic wellcare.coach. So I have three things that I'm working on. And I decided, I said, I need to create a course, because all these things that I learned that have helped me, if I would have known them between the ages of 21 and 29, I think that, and I'm talking about positive psychology principles such as growth mindset, real-time resilience skills, self-regulation, mind traps, how to become your own CBT therapist, how to understand that your neuroplasticity, how your brain works, your limbic system, prefrontal cortex, all these wonderful things that positive psychology teaches you. I said, I need to like create something that I could help people between the ages of 20 and 29, which are, those people are called Vicenarians. If you didn't know that, I said, because if I create this course, um, these people are going to have a better head start than I did, because, I think when you turn 30, I think that's when those are your most important decision-making years. I think that's when you're deciding, do I want to get married? Do I want to have children? Where do I want to live? What career do I really want to get into? And I think if I would have had some of these skills back then, I probably would have made much different decisions. So that was really the main reason. And also, well, that was, the Get Real Deal and Heal course that I created, that was part of Yomenga. But since that time, since 2018, when COVID hit, I had to pivot, and Yomenga's kind of gone in a different direction. And now, this holistic WellCare advisors is what I do also as well. It's kind of gone in a different direction, but they all kind of tie back to each other. The thing that, with the Yomenga thing, I just felt that, back in 2018, when things were coming out, like Matt Lauer and a bunch of other people were getting in trouble for a lot of the things that they were doing, I said, I didn't like the word toxic masculinity. I don't mind the word masculinity, but I'm kind of offended by the word toxic, because I don't consider myself a toxic person. What I consider myself is an uneducated man. So when I refer to, anything that has to do with teaching men how to become more spiritual, emotional, physically better for themselves, I like to call it uneducated masculinity. So that's kind of how that started as well.
Hey, Unbroken Nation, we'll be right back to the show, but I wanted to let you know that you can grab a copy of my first book, Think Unbroken, Understanding and Overcoming Childhood Trauma, for free. If you go to book.thinkunbroken.com, you can download the PDF ebook version of the book and get everything that I know about the baseline of healing trauma for free, downloaded to your email right now. Just go to book.thinkunbroken.com to download your copy of Think Unbroken, Understanding and Overcoming Childhood Trauma for a PDF for your phone. Again, that is book.thinkunbroken.com. Yeah, I actually relate to that a lot. I was on a podcast, a pretty big show recently, and was having a conversation with the host, and I said, I don't subscribe to this toxic masculinity idea, because the truth is, for so many of us, and I can only speak as a man, obviously, like you, I was raised by women. I never met my father. My stepfather was incredibly abusive. The men in my life and the other boys I were around, all we were doing was getting in trouble and breaking the law. Right. I had no measurement for what it meant to be a healthy and educated man. And so, like many men, how did I learn? And look, and one of the things people need to understand is the statistics that 3 in 6 boys are raised by a single mother. Like, yeah. And those statistics vary. I've seen it as high as 4 in 5. I think that's probably too high, but I don't know. So, you have to factor that in. And for a long time, this word toxic was going around, and I'm like, yeah, but there's never a conversation about toxic femininity or toxic this or that. And I've always thought that it was a bit odd. Now, of
Yeah,
course, I recognize there are like, look, there are people who do fucking bad things. That's
of
the world.
course.
Like that's
Yeah,
how it exists. People did bad things to us. That's why we're even having this fucking conversation.
yeah,
And to be pigeonholed because of poor decisions, I think is a really dangerous and dogmatic game that we play, because there's no questions asked. And I've admitted this, and I will always own my truth. In my 20s, as a man, I was a fucking monster.
yeah,
Period.
yeah.
Period. I didn't know. And you don't know what you don't know. And it wasn't until I hit a rock bottom moment and I was like, oh, maybe there's something different here. And that led me down this path of therapy, of coaching, of men's group therapy, of retreats and workshops and seminars and courses and all of the things that have led me to where I am. Like I never felt toxic then. I just felt like I didn't understand. And there's people who are going to email me. I already know they're going to be like, whatever, I'm just sharing my truth. And I don't align with that. And I don't think a lot of people do. And I love that you pointed out that you created something that you thought you would need. I mean, that's Think Unbroken. That's the entire crux to this. Because if I could redo my 20s with this information, assuming that I was ready to receive said information, my life would have been very, very different. But, I think part of it is, we don't really understand the brain science that can even lead to this place where we can have this conversation, Dan. And so I really love for you to kind of just high level hit us, talk about neuroplasticity, talk about triggers, talk about emotional scars, but most importantly, talk about rewiring your brain.
Yeah, that's a very interesting topic. It's there's so many different mentors that I follow, like Joe Dispenza and Greg Braden and a few others that really talk about this neuroplasticity and the brain. And it was all new to me. I think it was like an aha moment for me when it was taught to me, like how you have this limbic system, which is the fight, flight, and freeze mechanism, and how you have your prefrontal cortex and how they're attached, and basically how the limbic system is your emotional side where you feel all these emotions, but your prefrontal cortex is the logical, rational side. And that we're the only species that has this neocortex that really has the ability to self-regulate our emotions. However, we've developed a lot of habits, right? Over the years, and these things that I had mentioned when we first started the conversation, such as beliefs, such as I'm not good enough, what's wrong with me, I did something wrong, can be stored in our subconscious, right? We have a subconscious mind and we have a conscious mind. And basically the beliefs that we hold, with these with neuroplasticity, and the that we have these, basically a dendrite and an axon that has like these little electrical signals that fire in between these things that create a thought. So for instance, like, if you have a thought that, or if you have this belief that I'm not good enough, and then you have this thought, the belief that I'm not good enough, and then the thought like, oh, I applied for this job and they don't want me, that I'm just a bad person. That's just reinforced, right? That's just that neuro the you know what I mean? It just keeps firing the synapse there. So what you need to do is to create a new neural pathway. And the only way to really do that is with deliberate practice, right? And the best way that I could kind of give you an example of this is if you work at your job and you have to create a password to log into Windows at your job, every 90 days or 30 days or whatever the security policy is, they basically tell you to change your password, right? So you go into work one day and you change your password, you get up, you go get a cup of coffee, come back, what do? You start typing in the old password again, right? And then you realize, whoa, I gotta basically type in the new password. Well, here I'll just give you an example. Like, this is the neural pathway that you created for that old password, and this is the new neural pathway that you created for the new password. With deliberate practice, each day that you come in and type the new password, the synapse there that between the axon and the dendrite starts to starts to close more, and the old one starts to separate. And basically, that's how a new thought, a new habit is basically created. So it's deliberate practice, and we're like 60% habits. So, if you want to kind of like change something in your life, you have to just kind of do repetition, repetition, repetition to change it, to build up that new neural pathway. And that takes time, but it could take a short time. It depends on, how big of an experience it is and how impactful it is. Some people change right away, but over time, like when I had to learn to love myself, and I gave you that example of when I created the 9 ingredients of love, how I read them morning and night, it took probably like 5 months before I was able to actually move that from my head to my heart. So, real, I hope that I gave a good example of how that happens, where you build a new habit.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, that makes perfect sense to me. And as you were saying that, I remembered I used to work for a Fortune 10 company. We had to change our passwords every 45 days, and it used to drive me freaking crazy. That just I'm now triggered in the middle of this conversation, very pissed off at that company. But you're spot on, and I think about this. I've mentioned on the show many times, like I used to be a 2 pack a day smoker for a very long time, which is a very stupid thing to do. And I quit smoking 1,000 times, right? But it was this repetitive process of, can I create a space of time between cigarette to cigarette to cigarette to cigarette, and like 30 minutes became 40 minutes, became an hour, became 3 hours, became one day, became 3 days, became a year, became now a decade later, right? And so a lot of that is really about changing that, and that's a behavioral habit too. You see so many research studies point to addiction isn't even about the necessarily the substance as it is the behavior around the substance, right? That's why you see people who, they one of the things that they will do is, especially smoking is an easy one because we're talking about it,
Right.
but it's a mouth thing. It's a behavior of this, the back and forth of in conversation at the bar. And so if you can just change that, maybe use a toothpick or a straw or chewing gum, it changes the behavior, thus making those synapse connections and creating the behavioral change. One of the things that I think people particularly struggle with, and this was my struggle as well, was in this space of honesty. Like as I'm sitting here with you, Dan, I'm like, oh, we're having a very real, raw, honest
Yeah.
conversation. And I think so many people struggle with opening and having their heart open and doing that, especially in connections with loved ones. And so I'd love for you to talk about some techniques that people can use to better connect. And I think you pointed to something I thought was really powerful. You were in a relationship where you started learning that. And to me, I feel like a big part of it is the human connection that we have, because that can be created. But I'm wondering if you can break down some ideas of how people can openly and honestly connect with their truth with other people.
I think it comes down to really being vulnerable and not being scared. And that's a hard thing because, most people, when they want to create like some behavior change, there's usually some fear. At the core is fear, false evidence appearing real because we've, through society, environmental factors, and again, these beliefs, we develop these thoughts. And one of them is that we're afraid of what people think of us, right? If we are vulnerable, if we do open up to, a loved one of how we feel. Yet, from my experience, people already know how you feel. We're energetic beings. And from my experience, people know, like loved ones know when something's going on with you because they usually ask, hey, what's wrong with you? And then what do? We say, oh, nothing, right? And I think that's what you're getting at, Michael, is like when somebody kind of asks you like what's wrong and then you back away, where does that come from? Like, is it come from some shameful thing? Is it some guilt? Is it just low self-esteem? Is it you're afraid of what people are going to think of you? Do you feel weak because you've watched on TV, like, people being chastised and put down for expressing their feelings? If you were raised in a family that didn't have great communication style and they were aggressive, right, or passive aggressive or passive, right? You will develop those communication skills as well. So then you become fearful. And I think the only way that you could really try and overcome that is to just walk through your fear and just have to have an honest conversation. Find somebody that you can have an honest conversation with. And it may not even be a family member. Just because you have a blood relative doesn't mean that they're the most closest person to you. It could be a friend as well. If you can't do that, I would suggest writing your thoughts out, writing them so that way they're not stuck in your brain. Because I know for me, if I have something that's bothering me, when does it usually affect me the most? Right before I go to bed. I'm just like thinking and thinking and thinking. I'm like, oh God. So then I got to write that down. So, I think that's the best way that you could actually, really address this, is to not be fearful and, express your feelings. That we're human. We're meant to express our feelings. It's the way that we're wired. And one of the most important things that I've learned in positive psychology, and I think what society does, is they say that expressing anger and expressing sadness is bad. It's not bad. It's good. Those are good feelings to
Mhm.
express. So I don't even like to label those feelings as negative. But in society, we tend to say, "Oh, you're acting negative," and people will judge you and label you. And you have to, learn that that's not the correct way of how it is. And you want to surround yourself with people who are going to understand that and to give you the support that you need.
I agree. And I think also one of the things that you find and you discover as you step into that is the people who want to push back and, even chastise you about being an emotional human being, they have their own work to do.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I'll never forget once I had a conversation with a group of friends and I was sharing something very intimate and vulnerable and important in my life. And you might as well thought I was talking to a wall. And and
Yeah.
I realized in that moment, I was like, oh, these aren't my people.
Yeah.
And that's a hard truth because, I think natively to the beginning of your story, like we want people to like us, but what you will discover, and this has been my discovery, is that as you hold your truth and as you step in your power and as you even recognize like that shift, right? Because you've had that shift, that rewiring in your brain to go from I'm concerned if people like me to I like me first, and if they don't, that's fine.
Yes.
That's a process.
Hmm.
That's a journey. And you have to give yourself some space, some grace, some compassion, and some empathy to arrive there. And on a long enough timeline, just like the password, it will hold true that you remember who you are. Dan, my friend, this has been an amazing conversation. Before I ask you my last question, where can everyone find you?
Well, you go to my website at holisticwellcare.coach, and you could find me on all the social media platforms as well: Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok. So that's where you could find me.
Brilliant. And of course, we'll put the links in the show notes for the audience. My last question for you, my friend. What does it mean to you to be unbroken?
I think it means everything. I think it means, honestly, the first thoughts that come to my mind is that I have the freedom to be my true, authentic self, and to love myself, and to not worry, and to experience greatness, and to continue to basically share my story and share my light, and hopefully be able to help as many people as I possibly can, because I think that's what it's all about.
Mm. I literally same. Brilliant, my friend. Thank you so much for being here. Unbroken Nation, thank you so much for listening. Please like, subscribe, comment, share, tell a friend. And until next time, my friends, be unbroken. I'll see ya. We'll be right back to the show, my friend, but I wanted to let you know about our brand new podcast community for Think Unbroken podcast. I know that for so many trauma survivors like myself, for the longest time, I felt alone, like nobody got it, nobody understood, and that I was just going to have to figure this out on my own. But that's not true. And the reason why we created our brand new Think Unbroken Academy podcast community is so that we can bring all the members of the Unbroken Nation together in a place where we can can learn, grow, heal, change, and transform our trauma into triumph. I would love to have you come and be a part of the brand new community. Just check out thinkunbrokenacademy.com or click the link in the podcast description, and I cannot wait to see you there, my friend. Again, just head over to thinkunbrokenacademy.com, and until then, be unbroken. Thank you so much for listening to Think Unbroken. Please share this episode with someone who could use it and help us move forward in our mission of ending generational trauma in our lifetime. And if you would, please take 5 seconds to pop on iTunes or Spotify, hit that 5-star, leave a review, and you can also reach out to us on social at Michael Unbroken or at Think Unbroken. And of course, you can check out our YouTube channel at Think Unbroken. Thank you for being a part of Unbroken Nation, my friends, and until next time, be unbroken. Hey, my friends, we will be right back to the show, but I have a question for you. Are you struggling with the impact of childhood trauma? Well, know that you're not alone. I'm here to let you know that I'm starting a brand new weekly coaching group that includes a year of live coaching, accountability, support, habit and goal setting, and more. I'm starting a waitlist for the group right now, and I'm only taking a handful of people. And I'll let you know that through this personalized coaching, we'll work together to help you understand how your childhood trauma has shaped your beliefs, behaviors, emotions, and will help you create a roadmap for healing and growth. Right now, you can schedule an absolutely free coaching session with me and get put on the waitlist if you go to thinkunbroken.com. My friends, it's your time to turn your trauma into triumph, breakdowns into breakthroughs, and become the hero of your own story. And I'm here to support you in doing that. Just go to thinkunbroken.com to register for a free coaching call with me and to get put on the wait list for the brand new weekly coaching program.